What is up, everyone? This is a very special day. If many of you might know, the Nerdtooine and Movie podcast has been on hiatus for quite some time. But before it comes back officially, I had to get one of my good friends, Jason Douglas, back on the podcast for this live interview to talk about what a crazy year it's been and all the great stuff that he's got working right now. So, how are you doing today, Jason?
Oh, well, I am here. I am with you. It is an honor as always. What is this? Is this 3 times? Is this 4 times? Where are we at?
This is now the fourth time you
number
are, as of
4.
now,
This
the
is
most appeared person on
the
my
Golden State
podcast.
Warriors. This is the 4th ring. I feel very good about this. This is nice. Yes.
It's really funny. The first one we had the interview, like we had like 30 questions and we went through all of them. Then we went way over time. And then this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to give you 3 questions and we're just going to get there organically because that's how we always did it. It just seems to be the way we do things. So I want to start off with, first of all, congratulating you on your Ringo nomination. That is, honestly, for anyone who doesn't know, that is a big award for comic creators. And just to be even considered is a great honor. You want to speak on how that felt?
Yeah, that was kind of the capper of the first leg of the journey of getting this book out there, from inception to publication and all the variants and selling out, and then this very unexpected 2 Ringo nominations that just appeared and kind of it's hard to put into words because it was, not that any of it was like part of some grand plan. It was a story. I mean, we've talked about this before. It was a story that I felt I needed to tell. It was something that I needed to do in my life, very similar to the themes in the book. Not letting that dream defer any longer, but not even in my wildest dreams do I see myself going and rubbing elbows with these people who I idolized 20, 30 years before in my youth, creators, and standing up on stage and giving a speech and presenting awards and very gracefully losing to the guy who writes Batman.
I mean, seriously, James Tynion. I mean, I've actually, like, just to be in that same breath. I mean, as someone who's currently working on his comic, the Ashcan is getting drawn as we speak, thinking of the future and that is even remotely like in like a realm of possibility is mind-boggling. And for you to have done that,
there are all these spots along the journey, along this multiple year journey where, before I saw the first page of art come in, right? I could imagine that first page of art coming in. Before Justin Birch put the letters on it, let me watch do that. I could imagine somebody putting letters, because there's a script that exists, and it's the next logical step, whether you get there or not. You can imagine that. I can imagine being at a con and selling books and signing books and stuff like that. But Baltimore and the awards and the nominations and being on the stage and stuff, that wasn't even one that like popped up in a weird fever dream. It's so out of left field and such an amazing experience to have done that a heck of a cap on the first leg of this journey, before we get to this stage with the special edition project.
Well, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, what the journey that you've been on for this book is one that I don't think even many creators would be privy to. You know what I mean? Like you had this global pandemic basically shut your whole project down. Like it's like, hey, let's release this now. Perfect. Oh, global pandemic. Oh shit.
I don't know.
You can't plan for.
Right. Obviously, we don't know how this all would have played out had things been different. But let's be frank. I mean, the book tanked at the beginning. It didn't sell up to expectations, and part of that was new author. Part of that was, Source Point Press was still on the upswing. Part of that, a huge part of that, was the world shutting down and copies couldn't even get to people and stuff like that. But it did still get us to where we are now, right? Like if that hadn't happened, I would have started the convention circuit earlier, and I don't know how that would have gone. Instead of spending
Right.
18 months doing 75 interviews that I didn't know supposed to be doing. Like, I didn't know that that's not how you did it. It was just that blissful ignorance I think I've talked about on the show before. And I just went
Yep.
ahead and did that. And suddenly, word spreads, and people start nominating it for the Ringos, and people start buying copies a little bit here, a little bit there, and it turns into what it turned into. So I don't know. Uh, does it? I mean, we certainly don't get, it's very Robert Frost, right? Two roads diverge in the yellow wood. And I happen to go down the path less traveled, not necessarily by choice, just
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's the way it played out. And that's what gets us here. So, it's, again, as he says in the poem, that's made all the difference.
So, I mean, one thing I will say is like it may not be the normal way per se, but I do think that it spoke to a lot of people because, especially the source material, what you're talking about is dreams deferred, and you basically went for your dream, and then the world deferred it, and you were like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. I'm gonna go on a million podcasts, and I'm gonna spread the word myself if I have to, and
Yeah.
and that spoke to a lot of us. I mean, I know I've read it numerous times, and it honestly is somewhat of an inspiration to me to write my book, because I read yours like I don't want to be this guy, that is like having these like split personality like of what it could have been. I'm gonna try to make it so,
Yeah.
and that is, I think that spoke to a lot of people on a very like deep level, which is what made the book once the word got out. I think that's what made it so successful.
I mean, from day one, I think one of the founding and most kind of concrete ideas in my head was, and I think this is the same going forward with other projects too. Like, it's very much a split purpose in that the comic book nerd in me wants a very entertaining, very rereadable, bang for your buck story wrapped in a genre that I love that helps tell the story. But at the core of it, there's something a bit more universal, something a bit more thematic that is either driving it, or it's that itch that I've got to scratch. And in the case of Parallel, of course, it's dreams deferred and time passing, and the existential dread or depression or anxiety that manifests when you go through your version of that. In the case of Landon, it just happens to be voices and visions of a different version of him reaching out and offering him that second chance that most of us don't get. There's the sci-fi wrapping paper, but like at its core, I really want these stories to be something that's relatable. I mean, universal themes are universal themes for a reason, right?
Yes.
Yes. Comic books, especially indie comic books, happen to be the perfect medium to be able to tell something that can reach people, but in a very interesting way without a lot of editorial mandate when it comes to indie comics, or strictures of form and balance when it comes to other mediums. So maybe the perfect place to tell those kind of stories. Because I think in a lot of other times you're leaning harder towards genre, and that almost becomes the theme, or it is something that is considered, just high literature and it's about the theme, and maybe the trappings around it aren't as interesting to as many people. And indie comics, it's a place where you can get it all.
Well, and then you coin. I mean, I say this, and I give you credit every time I do. It is the most malleable
Yeah.
form of entertainment there is. You can tell literally any story in a comic book, and it's shown also with the indie comics, and I say this time and time again. 9 times out of 10, the indie comics are better written and better drawn because they have to be. You can't just put a 5 different Batman comics out and 5 different Spider-Man comic books and just go, oh, it's Spider-Man, I'm gonna buy it. You have to give the reader something that's gonna be like, why am I picking this up?
Right.
It doesn't have that super recognizable, like, oh my god, new Spider-Man title. I don't care who's writing it. I'm gonna pick it up and give it a shot. Indie comics don't have that luxury, and they have to raise the bar every so often, because they are in many cases the better stories. At least in my opinion. I read predominantly at this point indies that I enjoy. When I'm Like, of course, I'll read Marvel, I'll read the Star Wars books because that's the stuff I'm interested in. But like,
Yeah, me too.
it's like a task though. It's like, oh, okay, let me read this. Let me go ahead and read the new Star Wars book. But like, when it comes to something like, talk about James Tinian, like Something is Killing the Children or Department of Truth, it's like, oh, give me it, I need it. Like, and that is something that the indie comics do far better, in my opinion, than the big two, and maybe even Image in a lot of the cases, because Image has also got a lot of the superhero stuff now too.
Right.
But I mean, they still have the great books as well. I'm not trying to downplay any studio at this point, because I mean, they're all, and anyone who's like, I only read Marvel, I only read DC, I only read independent, why? Yeah. Why are you literally going, I'm going to take some of the stuff that I could enjoy and just off rip discredit it no matter what? That just makes no sense to me. And
find the creators that you love, find the stories that speak to you, and spend your dollars wisely, for sure.
Yeah, and then of course, with all the new influencers and all of that hoopla that's going on, don't worry, folks, I will have a lot to say about that in the coming year when I come back. But that's not what we're here about today. So why don't, I mean, I'm sure anyone who's gonna be watching this on the replay or live here, when they've been here with me, they know what Parallel is. Why don't you give them a little summation of what Parallel is?
So I'll give you the elevator pitch. The quick one is very simple. This is a dark sci-fi twisted tale, basically asking you, the reader, the question: what price would you pay for a second chance at all the dreams you thought you left behind forever? And Landon, our main protagonist, is having his quarter life crisis. He's pushing 30 and he's wondering where that decade went when all the dreams seemed attainable. And even when you defer them in your early 20s or late teens because you think you have all the time in the world, and you make those decisions based on, this is what I need to get by tomorrow, but I've always got time to hit that dream the next day. You wake up and suddenly maybe they're gone. And like I said before, that existential dread that we all go through at different times. Me was a bit more middle-aged. For him, it's quarter life crisis. It manifests in different ways for different people. For him, it's these voices and visions of this parallel version of him offering that second chance. Unfortunately for Landon, that price of that second chance, probably not in his best interest mentally and physically. And it gets pretty dark pretty fast. And
yeah, it does.
And pretty fun. And that wonderful, ambiguous ending where you get to go, oh boy, how does that go down? And then here we are with because of the success of that book and the way people did relate to it. And I really think that's what it is, because it's not, like you said, it's not, there's no Marvel or DC marketing machine behind it. It's literally me going on your show 4 times, and the word got out there, and the thing sells out, and the thing, the acclaim it got. And it spurred on the ability for us to have this special edition that's in previews right now.
So what sets the special edition on its own away from the original release?
So there's kind of 2 things that came together, and this is very similar to the original gestation of the book, where there wasn't really, and we've told this story on your show before, where there's not really just one thing that Parallel came from. It was like this confluence of events that came together, and suddenly it all worked. The same thing kind of happened here. Source Point was like, this is something we could probably do. And at the exact same time, I went back on an idea / promise that I had said to myself and had said on any number of those 75 shows that I did. And that was, the story's done. Right. I mean, I don't know how many times people asked me, like, in a setting like this, like, is there more story to tell? What happens next, kind of thing. And I always push back against that. And I was like, well, there's a beginning, middle, and end here. And that's something that I particularly like about my comics. Right. I mean, give me Uncanny X-Men for 17 years of Claremont, and that's unending in a lot of ways, but really that beginning, middle, and end, and then it spurs on rereadability. That for me is perfect. So I was really happy that it had those 3 pieces. It had that progression, and you could go back and reread it, but there wasn't more. And then between, Source Point kind of saying, hey, is there an extra material? Can we put together some back matter? Can we make this special? And one of the things that they said is, one of the best things about a special edition is, a new story, right? A new short blurb at the back, like a 10-page or a 12-page, extra going back into the story. And I'm like, well, yes, that is great, but there's no more story to tell. And then this idea just popped in my brain, and I got super excited. something that I've always been either amused by or loved going back to the reading of like Marvel Comics when I was a kid is that editorial trick of between a panel, between a page, between an issue when some major event happens, but all in that monthly book it gets mentioned is just a little editorial blurb at the bottom. Like the Infinity War literally happened between panels 7 and 8, and you're like, wow, that's a lot between those two panels where nothing actually happens in the book. And that always either amused me or whatever, or it pushed you to go find out more depth of the story that you were reading in your 22 pages. And that raw idea turned into a way back into the story for me, because there were things that happened between panels, between pages that we don't get to see. There's more character development that right there. And I started from a point about a scene that I believe you and I even talked to, because I remember one time when I was on, we were talking about like any editorial changes that happened in the process of writing it and any cuts that I had to make. And there was this one scene in particular where you've got all this kind of these a couple of interactions between Claire and the detective along the way. And it kind of like builds up and it changes and their relationship changes and there's some suggestive stuff and it's pretty subtle. But in one of those scenes where she's in her office and she interacts with him, there's like, it was a little longer in the original script. There was a couple more beats there, and Bob Sally had me cut it back, and he was right because of it changed the pacing a little bit. It screwed up our page count a little bit, and I was doing a little too much telling and not showing. And so his call was absolutely right, but I really, really liked what that extended scene suggested. Right. And it went to this step that you still didn't see, but it said something more about the softening of her. And in my opinion, it brought the sympathy for Claire in the second half of the book. It brought it forward a little bit, and you got there a little bit sooner than you do in just the normal reading of the original copy. And so I started there. And what I did is this brand new 10-page story in the special edition with like these 2-page by 2-page by 2-page vignettes of all of our favorite characters in there and some of the things that happen between this scene and that scene, between that page and that page. And it kind of fleshes out and enriches that story. So like when you've done multiple readings and you go back and read this new thing and you go, so that's what they did. And that's why they're there. And it's not something you need, but now it just enriches and adds to it and leads to a lot of those big crescendo moments that happen, especially in the second half of the book. And I think makes it even that much more enjoyable. And it's like I was thinking about this yesterday. It reminds me of going back and like spending some time with like old friends, it's like, and because a lot of those scenes happened before some of the really dark, intense stuff in the second half of the book, it reminded me, this popped in my head yesterday, of like watching the first half of Goodfellas and the first half of Boogie Nights when you're just hanging out.
Okay.
I love these guys before the dark twist happens. Yep. Ooh, this hurts to watch, kind of thing. And
with the montage, like
right.
Yeah.
Right. Before you go from New Year's Eve 79 to 80. Yeah. So this is one of the main features of the special edition. Special edition I'm really excited about because it's literally 50 extra pages of content. And thank you Ed Brubaker for the inspiration. He has the best back matter. And I wrote a new afterword that kind of details some of the trials and tribulations and the story along the way to publication. We've got a wicked cool cover gallery with all those variants that I know that you loved and all the different covers of the book. And obviously the new cover for the special edition, which I think might be the best out of the lot. I've got annotated script pages. I've got annotated concept art, of course. The coup de grace, the 10-page bonus story back into the world of Parallel.
So as you said, I've read it multiple times, and I truly love the story, and I tell everyone I can get a hold of about it. When you start talking about the going back in and those little extra things, what I bet is a lot of people who have read it multiple times like me are going to be like, see, I knew it. Yeah, like you get, because your work is very well done, and it leads you to come to your own conclusions, but it still gives you the context that you need. And I feel like these little extra little bits are going to make so many people like me are going to be like, see, I told you. I told you. This is exactly what I was saying. And I love the fact that just seeing your excitement about getting this extra stuff in there, and the the funny flip from there's nothing left to tell to
Oh yeah,
actually.
right. Oh, I was sure. I was sure. I was absolutely sure. So I got to tell you though. So when I was writing those 10 pages, I had the biggest smile on my face for all of them, but it was two different kinds of smiles. Right? There was one of like warmth and joy. There's a couple of the 2-page vignettes that really I think flesh out a couple of characters and give them some hope, and you feel pretty good about what you're reading. And as I was writing that, and as it was coming together and I'm typing away, it was just one of these kind of, that's nice. I'm so glad people are going to get to see that's how that is, and look at how they come together. Oh, wonderful. And then there's a couple other 2-page vignettes that I don't want to spoil anything, but very Landon specific, where I was smiling, but man, was it an evil smile, because really what we're doing there is kind of expanding on a certain part of the book where he's got a lot of personal hope before it comes crashing down about as hard as it comes crashing down in the book. So that extends out, and you go, oh, he's gonna be fine. Then of course he isn't. So it's almost like just torturing the audience a little bit and giving them more hope before it hits the fan and he goes on that final downward spiral where maybe he comes back from it, maybe he doesn't.
Yeah. Wait, you're talking about the cover galleries. I was thinking about it. I'm pretty sure I have all of them, but there is one I think I'm missing, and it's that Donnie Darko foil.
Oh, the foil one, right? Like those, I do.
That's the only one I don't have. Like because I can't find it. Like I found 2 of the regular copies literally in the wild at a convention, but this freaking no, it's 4 copies actually. 4 copies. But that foil, man, it's like my white whale. It's eluded me. Every time I go looking for it, I can't find one.
It was as the collector in me who loves to find a deal, it frustrated me so much. Like I was, when I would see it, when it would pop up online on eBay every once in a while, right? And it was like going for like over $100 or something insane like that. I was like, oh my God, how cool is that? And then I was like, oh no, the collector, like if this was me seeking out, I would hate that so much. And, flattered at the same time as like absolutely dismayed by it. So
I completely understand that. Like I just released my first exclusive. It was a Source Point Good Boy Volume 3, number 1. And like, I saw someone reselling, because all we had was the chromium, the metals, and the virgins are coming in soon, selling it for almost $40 more than what they paid it for me. And I'm sitting there going, that's so cool. Damn.
And that wasn't my intent. I hear you. Yeah.
And it's a double damn, because it's like, man, maybe I should have just sold it for that much. But no, that's not how it works. And that's perfectly fine. That's how it should be. You shouldn't be the person setting the ridiculous numbers. If someone wants to decide to charge that and someone wants to pay that, by all means, congratulations on the win. Thank you so much for purchasing my book in the first place. That's how it should be. And unfortunately, I don't know if that is the way with most people, but when it comes to Parallel and the themes, when you talk about themes, they're so like, and you said over and over again how you want it to speak to people, and there are so many people that will read Landon and go, that's me, and it changes the way you read it. And I like that we're now getting the little extra stuff that's going to make you want to go back and read not only the special edition, but the original without the little extra stuff. Like, let me see if I notice that as you're flipping through the pages. Like, that's something I can't wait to do, is compare and contrast.
I'm really hoping that this, the special edition, in previews right now, is something that like people who aren't familiar with the book could go and pick up and experience for the first time. But for like people who have read it before, in the same way that we used to talk about, bang for your buck and value in story and the rereadability and to be able to go and look at it a second time, because when you read it through, you might interpret it differently, especially after you hit that ending. I kind of had that same mentality this time around, because I was sure I was thinking about, here it is for a new reader, but I was really, really had in mind people who had already picked up the book, and like, how do I make this worth it for them to go get another copy? Because every dollar you spend is now a dollar you don't have, and I get that. So, I mean, that's why it's 50 extra pages. That's why the new story is there, and that's why. And this is, you know what? I'm super excited about the extra story. I'm super excited about the afterword, because it's very much in my voice and taking you through the story of how it got made and stuff like that. But one of the most fun pieces of putting this together was the annotations in the script pages and the concept art and stuff like that, because I found myself attempting to do the annotations in a very matter-of-fact way. Like, I tried to this is from this page and this kind of thing, from this point and this point in the process, that kind of thing. And then what ended up happening was my instinct of just going took over, and it's very much in my voice, and it's very much like anybody who dug it is going to be like, like the way you get excited about the book and the themes. I can't wait for you to read every annotation, because it's the stories behind the stories behind the stories.
Right.
And I mean, there's a couple of the script pages in there that literally tell the story about I'm like out on a date at a street fair with my wife, and she goes into a shop, and I literally, something hits me over the head like a lightning bolt, and I pull out paper and a pencil out of my back pocket and sit on a street corner and scribble out this scene right here that you're now reading. This comes from like downtown while people are playing Bago in the street, whipping beanbags past my head as I'm going, I got to get this down now, So it's that kind of thing. It's very much, it's not clinical. It's not dry. It's very much like me talking to you right now going, ooh, I got to tell you about this page, and I got to tell you about this scene, and where it came from. So that should be fun too.
I like that, because, one of the things that, like, I'm one of those people who gets like all the weird copies. So like, if I hear like there's a director's cut of a comic, I'll go get it. Usually there's not much extra. It's just like, it gives you a little bit here and there, but like, I love that, because it's almost like when you're going to read this, it's almost like you have director commentary.
Yes.
While you're reading it. And I love that. Absolutely love that, because I'm the type of person that will literally go watch a 5-hour movie with director's commentary just so I understand the scenes that much better.
There's that. I mean, I've seen the back matter that is, I mean, I think we've all seen this, that it's literally there to flesh out the page count, right? Because like the trade would be too thin or something like that. Like, I've seen that before, and maybe those are nice to flip through once or whatever, but it's not something, it's not bang for your buck, and it's not something you actually really care about. And that was very much on my mind the entire time. It was like, it's not just a script page, which might be useful or might be interesting to a certain percentage of people. It's a script pages with the story behind them, which is just going to be interesting and connect with a larger audience. And I don't know, I as much as these are stories or ideas or whatever that are coming out of my brain, I do want as many people to be able to relate to it as possible. And that's kind of the reason why, my stories have those closer to universal themes and stuff that is hopefully crowd pleasing, or at least crowd interesting.
Well, and that's the thing when we talked about it before, when it comes to writing an indie comic, you're not just putting words on a page. Every word is important. Every word has to deliver on something. Yeah. Every image, same thing. It can't. There's no wasted pages in the majority of, in my opinion, at least. Again, I have to say that, or else someone might kill me. In my opinion, that a lot of the indies have the advantage on, because they know that it's not like Marvel. You can literally, no matter what, you're gonna print 40,000 copies of this. Like, it's not one of those things where it's like, well, if this doesn't sell the first 10,000, we're not making another 10,000. Like, I don't think you understand this. Like, that might be it for you. And that's something that I can't wait, and I'm absolutely ridiculously terrified about with my book. And, it's funny. I almost took your route. When I went to MegaCon last year,
Yeah,
I
okay.
had my script.
Yeah.
I had the first character designs and the first couple rough drafts. And I had it on a thumb drive. And I was like, okay, when Jason went, he had it in this manila envelope, and that's not how you do things. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to do that, but with a thumb drive.
Yeah.
And I was going to walk right up to Garrett and be like, Garrett Gunn, anyone who doesn't know, that's someone who works with SourcePoint, one of the great writers of our time, in my opinion, and basically pitch it to him. And then it was in my bag all 3 days. And all 3 days I chickened out and would not hand it to him. But I'm glad now that I didn't, because it wasn't ready to be given to anybody. Yeah. Like that what I had was not worth his time, and that probably would have ended up ending the comic before it even started. Because if he was like, dude, like, you really try to hand this to me? Like, do you know what, like, even if they went home and looked at it, they'd have been like, oh, this is barely a script. This is 2 character designs. This is what do you expect us to do with this? And I'm so happy that I didn't, and I chickened out, because I kept hitting in the back of my head. I kept thinking of you giving it and then having to come back the next day and wondering that whole night, what's going to happen. I know I would have lost my mind. So I am so glad that I didn't do that. And not saying that I won't hand it to someone in the future. Like, it's about halfway done art wise, and once it's ready, I'm going to give it to anyone who will freaking open their hand.
You had the self-awareness to know where you were and know that it wasn't ready, and you made the right call, right?
But see, that's the thing. I don't think I actually knew at the time that it wasn't ready. Right. And I was in my head like, they'll see this and go, let's give you everything you need to make it, type thing. And obviously that wouldn't have happened. And, the story, like, and that's what, when you're telling me about how you're with your wife and you just, I had to write this down, like, stuff like that I would love to put in an afterword. Like, like, just so you all know, this whole thing almost ended before it ever started because of this. And like, I can't wait to read those extra little parts, because it is very much you, as you said. It's you kind of going, hey, this is something cool I gotta tell you. And as we've done numerous times, we literally do that live. So right. to be able to read that, and I think that's going to be a treat for anyone who A, likes the book, or B, knows you on any type of level. Yeah, but I'm definitely looking forward to that. So that is in the previews now.
Yeah. Diamond order code. I've got it memorized now. It's JAN, so January, JAN 23, 1872, which I'm sure is a significant year in history for some reason. I don't know what it is right now. So yeah, January 23, 1872. And honestly, you can just go to really cool, talk about, my lack of knowing of how comics are made or how comics are even ordered. Very 21st century, user-friendly. If you just go to previewsworld.com, you can order a copy, and they give you the option of clicking your LCS, and they get credit, and it comes to your local comic shop instead of, paying for shipping through Diamond or whatever. So that's really easy and whatever. And then you're supporting, you're supporting an indie creator, you're supporting a small press company, and hopefully getting bang for your buck for a really good story that people like that first time around, and was worth 2 Ringo nominations, just not as good as Batman stuff.
I mean, and as we said, I mean,
yeah, I will. It's gonna live with me. It honestly, I know it's a cliche. It's an honor to be nominated, but oh my god, are you kidding me? I mean, I
100% understand that feeling. Like, because when you think about it, and I'm actually going to be appearing on one of my friends' podcasts later this week, well, next week technically, and we're talking about Mount Rushmore of modern comic writers. And for me, Tynion is in there.
For real?
Because what he's done with so many different horror titles and Batman, and I mean, he's proven that he can write horror, superhero, you name it, he can write it. And I think that he's changed, and especially what he's done with kind of going off on his own with the Substack and all of that. Like, he has been responsible for helping revolutionize the indie
So
creator.
without spoiling, I don't want you to spoil any more content about your Mount Rushmore for the other show. But what are the parameters of what are you considering modern creators and modern writers? What time
So
frame?
I'm going off of the quote unquote like modern era,
Okay.
which is 85 to current.
Oh God, that's a lot of space right there.
So and
I'm already
what
mulling it
I
over in
did,
my brain what my 4 would be, and you just made
I'm
it much
looking at
more
it more
difficult.
in like the not necessarily so much as the talent of writer, but what they've done for the industry
Okay.
or for a title like again it's I've got
So
Claremont,
your Mount
you
Rushmore is more
know,
about importance and impact rather than even your favorite?
absolutely 100%.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I in my favorite, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Chris Claremont's one of is on there because that whole Wolverine run, the X-Men and all that, he did so
Mhm.
much. But going back and reading some of it, it's really just okay. Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, and that's fine. But as the great story, the whole story itself is what's iconic, what's amazing, and the legacy left by those runs can't be understated.
right.
But then, like, you look at someone like Tinian, who is one of my favorite writers, but he's also left that, like, if it was just my favorite, Garrett Gunn and Dr. Christie would be on it because
Yeah,
they don't put anything out I don't like. Like, I have
right.
not read a single book of theirs that I've been like, that I ever wanted to put down. Like, whether it's a long one shot, whether it's continuous volumes, it doesn't matter. Like, that's that favorites, that's where they would be on there. But we're talking about Mount Rushmore, and not was George Washington the best president? No.
No.
But is he iconic, and is his legacy standing the test of time, if you will? Yes.
Right.
So that's how I looked at it. I definitely look at it as who I enjoyed the most, or like I'm not even a big fan of Bendis per se, but like the legacy he's left
Right.
is
Sure.
you can't like if you're talking about House of M and all of these things that literally changed everything for the better,
Yeah.
in my opinion. You have to like put them on the Mount Rushmore. It wouldn't be someone I would.
Makes sense. I love it.
Yes, I would have literally all the good boys, all of that stuff. And if we're talking about just my favorites, oh please get out of here. People be like, who are these people you have on your Mount Rushmore? Well, indie people because they're better, but nonetheless. But speaking of creators, and so what's next for Jason Douglas?
So you dropped a very important name or two just now, and Dr. Christie especially. The next project is something that I've been working on for a while, and we've got a Kickstarter coming in May. That was supposed to be this past August, but health kind of derailed me. And so we're doing the parallel special edition first, and then we'll take that on the road. And then the Kickstarter, my very first Kickstarter in May, which is finally I'm learning how comics are supposed to be produced in the 21st century instead of my weird atypical, color paperclip in a manila envelope walking around. Take a look at this strategy the first time. And it's called Jane American, and it's another project very near and dear to my heart. Post World War II, 1946 small town Michigan story, similar to Parallel in the fact that it's wrapped in certain comic trappings of genre, but at its core, it's really about some deeper themes. In this case, identity and self-worth and gender and truly hiding who you are and being who you are and fulfilling your potential. And takes place just after all the troops come home from World War II, and Rosie the Riveters are back in the kitchen, and Jane, our 15-year-old protagonist, is dealing with that situation and with the things that she can do, and trying to get like a job in this factory that her mom no longer works in. Her father, who's passed away in the war, worked at before, and kind of the stresses of hiding who she is and trying to be who she is, and all the kind of societal pressures around there closing in on her, and how that her then struggle manifests in different ways. And I'm trying to very delicately tiptoe around the fact that the one shot, the 32-page one shot that the Kickstarter is for, ends on quite a cliffhanger,
Cliffhanger.
which is not how I wrote the original first part of it. But that was actually Garrett Gunn inspired. And then last summer, Dr. Christie and I sat down and kind of reworked some stuff and made it work in this 32-page format that kind of leaves you absolutely hungry for more. And the story itself is very close to my heart because it's very much inspired by my late grandmother and some of the gender role and identity things that she struggled with at a similar age a few years earlier. And then it's very much dedicated to all the young women and the young non-binary humans who have come through my classroom over the last 20 years, who even in the 21st century are still struggling with identity and self-fulfillment. And then you just extrapolate the fact that they're feeling those pressures in 2022 with 1946. And you can imagine how hard it would be for somebody who's clearly different and feels the need to hide as opposed to show who they truly are to the world.
Well, and for anyone who hasn't seen all 4 of the interviews, we've been talking about this book since literally the beginning, and to see it coming, and because we've talked about what the beginning of that story was going to look like, and now hearing this, and it speaks to who they are in Garrett Gunn and Dr. Christie in the forms of comic creators, because they see what you have, like, this is great, but if we do it like this, it could lead to this. And, and to be able to have someone in your corner like them, and I've met them. I've met Garrett in person. I've interviewed both of them, and they're great people, but to have that relationship where you can go to them and be like, this is what I got, and then Dr. Christie's like, all right, let me take my PhD and take a look at this, and that is gotta be one of the little beautiful cherries on the top of this sundae.
It is so. I'll be very honest with you. It's so amazing. So like Bob Sally was my editor on Parallel, and every single note he gave me was 100% right. It made the book better. Every single note he gave me, my hackles were up, and it was like killing my darlings, and I was angry about every single one. In retrospect, looking back, like, he's brilliant and he knows what he's doing. When Christie edits my work, it's like a party. Like, I love it because, like, every idea, every little twist, it's like we're working together. There's a lot of synchronicity going on. We think very much the same way about character and depth and emotional punch. And it's such a pleasure working with her. And like, even when I'm stuck on a page, or I don't have time to dig in and write that next chunk of 10 pages of what's going to be this 120 page, OGN by the time all is said and done. And I don't even have the motivation to sit down. What will actually literally motivate me is knowing, if I write these 5 pages, I get to send them to Christie. And she's going to read them and say, hey, I really like this. Twist this and turn this little turn of phrase, and it'll do this. And just to get that feedback and just to interact with this person who's so good at her job is motivation enough for me.
No, and that, like, and as someone who I don't really like when people go over my work and say what's wrong with it, but knowing her, and like I said, just the interactions between her and Garrett, I can see why that would be a joy. Because she's not just someone who's an editor. She writes herself, and she likes the likes comics, period. Like, that's something that, and not saying that any of the other editors didn't, but as someone who legit is writing their own as well, I feel like that sets her apart and Garrett apart from a lot of the other people who are in that kind of space that are really just trying to look at it more from, maybe a profitability standpoint or whatever the case may be. They're looking at it as, let's tell the better story, and then everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
And that's, like I said, that's not something that you probably get very often. Especially at probably the Marvel and DC, that's probably like, if you don't write it exactly like we tell you to, we're going to cancel your run. Like, I don't think you understand. Type thing.
You know what? I'm gonna coin a phrase right here, unless it's already been snagged. working with Christie is not editorial mandate. It is editorial collaboration. And that's a beautiful thing. And I truly appreciate it.
That's I like that. Like and you know, I don't have from a reference on that for like everything else we've talked about, like, you know, seeing the pages get drawn and you know the lettering and stuff. I actually have some, like, I can fall back on my own experiences, but I don't have anyone editing my stuff. It's just me, for lack of a better term, throwing up on the page.
Yeah, right.
And my artist going, okay, how about we take this out and this flows better if we move this here. I'm like, dude, do you? Like, I'm blessed with my artist at this point. He has just been, I give him something and he just goes, oh, this is what you meant, right? Yes, that is what I meant. Son of a bitch! Like,
isn't that amazing? Isn't that fun? When
yeah.
Yes, that was an eye opener. Absolutely.
Because you know, and as I'm sure you've had that, we've talked about this before about, you know, you write something and then to see it come to life with the art, it's an experience that I wish for everyone. Obviously, not everyone was talented enough or has the opportunity or any of those many pitfalls that would stop that from happening. But man, that, like, I remember when he sent me the first page, because I drew like horrible like storyboard how I wanted the first page to look, and then he sent it to me like, well, I did this, and I was like, that is better than I could have even imagined in my head. How did you do that? And it's, now that you're on your second, is there any different like feeling when this one's getting made or towards like or parallel? Because maybe like the first one, I feel like, as you've said, that like willful ignorance of just let's just do this is different now because you're looking at it a different way.
It's a good question, because at least I can speak for myself and say it's both. It's like very different, and you're much more self-aware, and yet because because it's a new story, right? So of course it's different, but because I'm making it in a different way, because I'm going through a much more traditional and less atypical channel of, you know, crowdfunding, and then the steps that go through that, and then it hits the publisher, and then you've got to find a way to fund the whole story and things like that. I'm still back at square one at a lot of the process, right? Yeah. Which, you know, is terrifying for me, right? In the same way that, like, when we talked early on, or even earlier than that, before, you know, certain chunks of it were even locked down, I was terrified because I had never done it before. I didn't know, you know, you just keep on going forward and you hope for the best. Same thing here with a Kickstarter. I've never done one of these before. I'm terrified about the make it or break it aspect of that. For whatever success I had before, for whatever skills that I now know I can pull off, whether it's, you know, the writing or forming of a page, to being at a convention and having a blast, you know, interacting with established fans and new people and things like that. This is all 100% new to me, and thus terrifying again, right? You know, I don't feel like I'm floundering, but, you know, that unknown aspect, woo-wee, that's it. We get closer to May, that's going to be keeping me up at night, and I'm going to be reaching out to this online community and my friends like you and say, like, I need help, because, you know, this is a very important thing to me, and I think you guys will enjoy it too. Help me make it happen, you know? Yeah. So a lot of things are the same, and thus, because they are, maybe you're a little more familiar with it, right? And I'm a little more aware of, you know, I thought I was doing a really good job with parallel of showing more than telling. And then, you know, like, my editor is like, a little bit less of your yappy right here. And this one, I'm even more aware of that. And I let the images speak for themselves a few more times. And obviously, you know, like I said, interacting with Christie has made it absolutely a seamlessly painless, beautiful process of making it better than it even was before. And then there's these new aspects that are just as new as anything, you know, and I'm sure that's the way it goes. Sure. Blah, blah, blah. No, I'm lucky project number 5 or something like that, I bet you there's going to be aspects of that where I'm going to go, well, I've never seen this before, and I might as well be I might as well be an infant weeping, going, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. I'm sure that just keeps on going for everything and anything.
Well, and it is a whole different animal, as you said, because you're jumping into the Kickstarter, and believe me, as someone who sees that in the distance, I feel your terror and your dread, because I don't know not a bit about how to do a successful Kickstarter, and I'm like a little different because I don't have someone working with me. I'm just kind of like doing it as I please. So I'm waiting until I have the ash can in hand before I even look at Kickstarter. Yeah. I want that. And so I at least have something tangible before I even start going down that road, which is a little bit of cowardice, if I will admit. I'm like, you know what? As long as I don't see
it's just move into the side. No, absolutely cowardice. Well, no. Get out of here. It's a different way to do it. I like that. I think that's a great idea. And then, but you know what you've got is you will then have solid manifestation of a dream that you had in your hands, no matter what comes next, and that's cool. Right. That's cool. That's a valid point, you're doing it this way. You're doing it this way, and there is now zero chance of it evaporating into some kind of coding ether, never to be heard of or seen of again, except for in your memory. It exists, and that's cool. I like that.
Never once thought of it in that way, but that I like that, because and people have always been asking me like, well, why? Because I've literally wrote the ash can and then stopped. I want the entire ash can to be completed in my hand before I keep going on with the story, because just in case something goes wrong with the artist or the script or something where I've got to start over, I don't want to have to start over from scratch if I don't have to. Now, because, I'm doing things a little bit differently. I always have that terror that something's going to happen and my words will then disappear, and someone else will get to say those, and I'll have to start from scratch with a new artist, new this, new that. And I think, that maybe that is my crutch at this point. So I don't have to continue the story until I know that where I'm picking it up from is exactly where I am picking it up from.
Dude, it's your experience. There's no matter how many people do it one way, there's no right or wrong way to do it. You're going to do it the way that it works for you, and the end product will be the thing that you created, and that's the right way to do it.
Well, we'll see. But, and we were talking a little.
I'm not giving you. Come on. Buy the lines I'm feeding you right now. You accept it right now.
You know damn well that 99% of the lines that are said on this show, I definitely agree with. But we haven't had anything focused at me yet, so I'm going to go ahead and put that one to the side.
This is about your self-confidence and your fears of what could or could not happen next. But I'm telling you, you're doing it, right? And you and I've talked about this on this show before. Like, if you don't, nothing exists. Nothing happens. I don't know what's going to happen next for you. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be a million seller. I don't know if it's going to be the ash. Who knows? But the fact that you're doing it means it will exist, as opposed to the absolute guarantee that nothing happens when you do nothing.
Yes, and that what happened to me was after I read Parallel. I'm not gonna lie. That's what and like I hope for everyone's sake that what I'm writing becomes this big thing. So when I'm like on stage talking about, my inspirations, well, there's this little book called Parallel that changed everything, because that's what really got me to. Because I've said before, I've been writing this novel for almost a decade, and then I just gave up. I was like, I'm done. I have no interest in 24,000 words later. I was like, I'm done. I don't feel like doing this anymore. I just have no passion for this. And then I read your book and was like, wait a minute. I could make it a comic book.
Yeah.
And instantly it sparked that, oh my God, this is how I get this done. This is how I finally can do what I've been dreaming about for years. And that is something that I will never be able to thank you enough for. And the way you wrote that, when we were talking earlier about how it's about the story and you had these little extra things that you wanted to say in there. When I read that, I remember thinking, this is one of the best stories I've read, because you didn't have to, and maybe it could have been because of the editing or whatever, but the exposition was just right. It gave you enough to where your brain will start working, and then you see the images and you see everything, and it's like, oh. And when you're talking about when Dr. Chris is looking at your stuff, how like to reword things to get this, because I like your thought process here. We'll focus more on that, and we'll adjust this, we'll adjust that. Thinking of that and trying to tell the best story possible is what really, and that might be what subconsciously what stands out with all of Dr. Christie and Gunn's work for me, is that they just care so much about telling such a good story that it subconsciously shows, because I didn't even think about it, that they're in their heads going, let's figure out the best way to, even with words and the book, like just the collaboration that I heard from them talking about how they work together, and seeing the same thing with you. It's that it speaks volumes to how much you care for the product.
Yes.
And that is not something that I think a lot of creators have these days. They're just trying to push out the next one, whether it's, to meet deadlines, whether it's to meet quotas, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
It that's something that I respect and absolutely almost fawn over, to be honest, because when you see, like when you were talking about your little excerpts, the joy on your face is undeniable. And that's what I wish every creator had, because we'd have a lot better titles if that was the case.
Yeah.
And,
I agree. I agree.
I think part of it for you also is that, your own body tried to make all of what we're talking about now obsolete and not even a factor. And I've said it on Instagram, we've talked, out of that, but I just have to congratulate you again. I mean, I was, the whole time I'm posting like, you're going to beat it, all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, please let him actually beat it, because you know how horrible I'm going to look if he doesn't. So I have to thank you live on air for making me right on that one.
I do. I got to interrupt this train of thought though, because you're about to get a live shout out here on the air. I just got a text from Dr. Christie herself saying that you are awesome. And I'm passing it on to you right now. The big smiley face from the good doctor herself to you, my friend.
That means quite a bit to me. I love her. I mean, every time, whether it's, even if it's just in like a random show where they're selling Good Boys, just in there just chatting, everything, she just exudes this amazing vibe, and I am so here for it. And I will reach out on my own after to thank her, but please, in real time, tell her how much that really does mean to me, and that I'm on the cusp of tearing up just a smidge.
I'm about to tell her that very thing.
Like, and again, and see, look, the fact that she took the time to say that, again, is representation. If we're talking about my Mount Rushmore and it's about who I like the most, they're sitting up there by themselves, basically, at this point. Right. Because there's not a single writer I can think of. I mean, so far you're 1 for 1, so you're on that list too. That everything that they've put out, I can't get enough of. It's so good, and there is no other. Tynion's the closest, and even but I haven't. There's been a couple of Tynyon books. Not that they're bad. it just wasn't for me type thing. Like, it doesn't matter what genre they're talking in, like what genre of, like, whether it's an anime style, whether it's a shoot 'em up, whether it's Christmas Caroline beating up all like violent. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just chef's kiss.
Well, there's I mean, obviously, like when an idea comes or when I'm writing, I'm very much inside my own head. But like when I think about, Parallel Special Edition right now, when I think about the Jane American one shot in May, I think one of the big things that kind of weighs on my brain is like how excited I am for like you specifically and your audience to get a hold of it, right? Like, I mean, we were talking about that today. Like, you can see me get excited when I talk about that new story, or I talk about the annotations, or I talk about the passion and the family history that's behind Jane American. And it's like, sometimes your audience is an abstract because it's very hard to know every single person who buys your book, specifically. Though I do try. I mean, you like anybody who's watching this needs to come and follow me on Instagram at J Douglas Writes, because I will talk your ear off, as you know, even there, and will never big time you because I do not write Batman. And I've got time for you. But audience in some ways is abstract, but like, there's people in this world who have become true friends like you that when I write that down, I go, oh, I cannot wait until he reads this. He's gonna love it. And that very much goes for Parallel Special Edition and for Jane American too.
Yeah. And I can't speak enough on how influential that Parallel has been for me. I always like keep coming back to the same thing, that it changed a lot of things for me, because you, in my opinion, are that success story that we need to like find a way to make the like lifetime story of Jason Douglas, because like seriously, you went from just being someone who writes plays for a high school to writing a comic, to having to do all the podcast, to re-release it, basically, to beating cancer, I mean, it's just, we're talking about these milestones that are bits in a movie.
Listen,
like,
some of that stuff, let's be honest, some of that stuff I would have liked to avoided, but like life is making this journey a lot more dramatic. You're right. It is starting to Hollywoodify itself. Again, not necessarily my intention, but hey, if it's going to happen, we might as well get it down and get it up there on film or something, right?
Hey, again, whether or not you wanted it to happen, it happened, and we have the documents to prove it. Right. But yeah, I am so excited for the special edition of Parallel. I can't wait. Like, that's one of those, like, I don't talk about books like I have to get, but that is a book I have to get. I've said many times, I don't really buy books for myself that much anymore, because I sell comics too. So for the majority of the things I buy, I'm buying bulk to resell, to do all that. But that one's for me. I'm definitely I'm excited for me on that one. And they'll be lucky if I get any to send to them to sell to my people on my drip shows. That might be one I just keep to myself and make you buy directly from you. But yeah, I want to thank you again, like I said, from the bottom of my heart, from you were actually the first person to give me a shot when I was writing for The Cultured Nerd. I reached out and I was like, hey, is there any way that we can do an interview? And it'll be just through email. It's fine.
And I'm like, how about 4? Let's go for 4.
And you know what? Hindsight, I wouldn't change a damn thing. I appreciate not just you as a creator, but as a person. And again, after I think we do this on every single show to end it up. Yeah. If anyone out there is having any issues, you're depressed, you're upset, or anything, and you think you're alone.
Yes.
That is not the case. Right. At the very least, with the 2 people who are on this show right now, we've said it, I think, on every single episode that we've done together. We will end up making you be like, you know what, I'm better, and I need to, can you leave me alone now? And that is, and reach out. That's the one thing I want to say. If you have anything, you're upset, you're what, or you just want to talk. If you want to go talk for 14 years about Batman, we sure as heck can do it. And I just want to reiterate that to anyone who sees this ever, that if you need anything, whether it's just to vent or you want to have any questions or anything, we are definitely here.
100%. 100%. You said it beautifully. It always feels isolating, and yet there is somebody out there who's willing to listen. There's always somebody out there who's willing to help. And 99 times out of 100, there's somebody out there who has been through something similar and can definitely relate and is going to be a really good sounding board for you, no matter what you're going through and how alone you feel.
Yeah. And we mean that. It's not just to say that. I mean, we both have literally screenshots of people that have like told us basically go away because we've talked to them so long.
Yeah.
So, but I want to say, Jason, thank you so much for coming again, and everyone, make sure I will make sure to put all the preview world stuff down below, so anyone can just click on it, because I want this parallel special edition to sell out quicker than Parallel, even though it took 2 years for it to sell out.
Yeah, it did.
But we don't. Hopefully, there's no global event that comes and derails.
Dude, don't even. You're going to speak it into existence. Take that back.
I take nothing back.
All right.
Because you want to know why? Because one way or the other, it's either going to make for a more entertaining story for your movie.
Sure.
For your Lifetime story.
Yeah. For my True Hollywood Story. Yep.
Do they even do those anymore? I don't know.
No. For my VH1 Behind the Music.
Behind the Music.
Uh-huh. I'm going to be on both of those.
But you have no idea.
I don't qualify for either, but we're going to do them both.
But I can't wait for this next leg of your journey to start, because it's been a long time coming, and with what you've had to accomplish and surpass to get to this point, you deserve nothing but a sellout like freaking Justin Bieber at the Garden. Like, right. 3 seconds, it's all gone. Good luck trying to find him on the secondhand market. Like,
right.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure again. We actually were able to keep this at a manageable time somehow. I don't know how we did that.
We're
just a little bit over an hour.
We didn't even touch 3 hours. This is a sad effort on both of our parts. Let's be honest.
Wait, is it a sad effort, or is it like Dr. Christie's editing it as we're going?
Yeah. She's watching over like by text.
We have a 3-hour version that's on the cutting room floor.
Tighten it up, you two blabbermouths, I believe is the next text coming through right now.
Oh my God. You know what? On that note, again, I appreciate you stopping by. We are going to pick this back up when we get closer to that Kickstarter campaign, because I know I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that gets as good as we need it to go and better, because I know you're writing. I know The Good Doctor. And if it's anywhere as amazing as I think it's going to be amazing. For like, I remember the first couple of things that we talked about Jane America, and I remember from that day, I've been waiting for it for like 2 years now. Like, let's go! I am so excited for this, and I know with all of how close it is to you, and all the deeper meanings that you have, and real quick before we go, I want to just touch on one thing that you do, and you said a lot, is that you have these stories you want to tell that have these underlying themes, and then you wrap it in something.
Yeah.
That's basically what I'm doing with my book too.
Yeah.
Because it's really the story of how far the human race will fall, and that there is good in the world no matter how dark it may be. And I'm just wrapping it in a zombie apocalypse.
Cool. I love it.
Like, so like it didn't hit me till just now, and I was like, wait a minute. That's what's happening here. I love it. But I can't wait for you to read that, because I'm sure you'll enjoy that. But
I love it.
Until next time, which will be a lot shorter than the last time we said that. I appreciate everything you do for the community, for, just if you want to talk about your normal day job, like you're educating people. That's something that we need more people like that in the world that actually give a crap about stuff like that. So I can't thank you enough. And it's nothing but love, my friend.
Well, you know how much I appreciate you. It's always an honor to be here with you. You're wonderful at your job. I'm excited for your future too. And thank you very much for having me on again.
Again, between you and Doctor, you're really trying to send me into an emotional breakdown right now and start
Might have been a
the
little
place.
emotional manipulation there on my part, but I meant every word of it at the same time.
I know you did it. That's why it's gonna work. Okay. Until next time, Nerdtooine family. We will catch you on the flip side.